Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this virtual professional development opportunity hosted by the Maine Department of Education. My name is Joe Schmidt. I'm the Social Studies Specialist for the Maine Department of Education. With us today, we have a very special guest. Our guest is Erin Towns. She's a 2018 National Grosvenor Fellow from National Geographic. She has had a lot of wonderful experience. Erin's actually a teacher leader from my cohort from last year, and has actually led a handful of webinars about her experiences and what she does, not only in the current things, but as part of our Teacher Leader webinar series. I think it was December or January, Erin, that you had your last one. It was one of those months.
I think it was December, Joe.
December, okay. So you can see Erin, I can direct you to this. She's got a webinar on our Teacher Leader series webpage as well. But with that all being said, I'd like to turn it over to Erin Towns, National Geographic Grosvenor Fellow from Edward Little High School. And yes, if you stick around till the complete end of the session, I will give you a link to a feedback survey that will get you a contact hour as well. So without any further ado, Erin, the floor is yours.
Hi, everybody. A quick question. Can you guys see my face or just the screen? You can see my face. All right, awesome. Hi, nice to see you. Nice to see you. It's a little bit more personal that way. I really thank you guys for joining me today. I get a little bit nervous when I present, so if you could just bear with me a little bit. It's sort of a weird, time and a weird format, but still, it's really great to see all of you here today. So thank you so much. So like Joe said, I am a social studies educator. I've taught at Edward Little High School for 21 years. I have been lucky enough to travel about the world on a number of different global professional development programs. I was interested today when I saw an email go out from Joe about taking time to talk to Maine educators, partially because I miss the interaction with my people, during this shutdown COVID time. And then also, I've been doing a lot of work, in the area of visual storytelling. And so I thought, well, maybe it'd be, kind of a good thing to be able to share and also, hear from you. So I kind of like a more interactive approach, so if at any point you have a question, raise your hand, chat it in the chat box, and by all means, I would love to have your input. I think the best things that we learn are from other educators, so I think it's just great that you're here. So it's my hope that this presentation will help you gain some new perspective and ideas that you can use during remote learning opportunities that you're offering, or on the other end of that, whenever we see our classrooms again. I'd like to thank, Joe Schmidt and Shari Templeton. I've been doing a lot of work this year with trying to combine social studies curriculum with science curriculum and, bringing those things together. And as a result of that, I've attended a number of different professional development presentations that the both of them have done across the state. And a lot of what I learned was from them and then other professional development programs. So I have to say, a lot of things that you're going to see here, everything is all ripped off. It's ripped off. It's from other people. It's from other programs. It's from teachers. It's the art of being able to take something that is really, really effective, that my students respond really well to, and then putting my own kind of brand and stamp on it and going from there, because all of us have different ways of doing things. So other resources I used, not only on a regular basis, but definitely in the creation of this particular presentation, Edutopia, National Geographic Education, Polar Trek. I'm not sure if any of you are familiar with the Polar Trek program or not. Let's see, what else? Direct Experience, in a number of different countries. So I have also taken the lesson plan from National Geographic Education on the power of images and storytelling, and sort of modeled this presentation around it, to serve as a framework for delivering information. So, yes, okay. So, Some of the things, and I think, one of the things that hit me the hardest was during the Maine Council for Social Studies holds an annual conference every October or sometimes November. Um, and, and at that, Joe had done a workshop on inquiry, and using imagery. He led by using imagery. And from there, I was really hooked. I tried some of what he had to say inside my classroom, started reading a lot about it, and noticed that uh, that that because it is very very engaging, students were able to buy into it a little bit easier. So um, so for me, I'd say the biggest takeaways that I've had, over the past couple of years is that the heart of social studies and science education is inquiry. And student inquiry is absolutely everything. Visual storytelling promotes inquiry and can be used for a platform for effective change outside of your classrooms as well. Yeah. So during my long-winded introduction here, right, you might be staring at a couple of images up on your screen. Hopefully you can see them. And I just kind of wanted to take a minute and jot down a couple of questions that come to mind when you look at those images, please. I'm going to give you actually 1 minute for time. 15 seconds. Leslie, not seeing the images. On the images on the PowerPoint in front of you? Oh, you're only seeing me. Hmm. Perhaps in the chat box option, there might be a way to expand what you're seeing. All right. So you have a couple of questions. Interesting images of food. It looks raw, food poisoning. Um, are they going to eat the food raw? I see sauces to dip the meat in with knives. Where is this picture taken? What country is this? Is this sanitary? Yeah. In 2017, and this is what I'm talking about with inquiry. Like a lot of times I will lead with something, like a couple of images. There's a number of different ways and strategies that you can get kids, asking questions. Sometimes it's as simple as what I just offered you. Please ask me, at least 2 questions. Do the little meat pieces come from the big pieces? Are these 2 images related? Yeah, this is cooking in other countries. Yes. Um, so um, this serves as a starting point, right? And the images were actually taken in the country of Ethiopia. It's part of the Fulbright Hayes summer seminar programs. Um, I'm going to be throwing out a lot of, well, for the purposes of this, I might throw out the names of some of these professional development programs. If you have any questions about them, you can feel free to email me and I can give you more information about them. But anyways, which sent me to Addis Ababa and Soto, Ethiopia I was there about 5 weeks. And it was to study political, economic, historical, social, and religious life in Ethiopia. Um, Well, what you are seeing is the national dish in Ethiopia. Yes, the two pictures are related. That meat did come directly from the meat that that man is cutting. That meat is not refrigerated. It is fresh every morning. It is delivered. It is not. It is eaten raw. The only, utensils that you will see them with are those knives. Everything is eaten by hand using the bread that you see on the right hand side rolled up in jira and then teff. And those sauces are something hot, hot, hot. So what does that have to, what does Ethiopia have to do with anything? Part of the way that I teach is that I try to look for holes in our curriculum that are needed. And I teach in an area that has a large East African population. And we weren't getting enough, curriculum. And so using imagery and using those experiences and bringing imagery from the areas of the world that might be underrepresented in, underrepresented oh my God, underrepresented? No. In your own curriculums might be a great place to start. So what we're going to be discussing today, I'll tell you what visual storytelling is, the types of things, and then we're going to talk about photography and how it's used, teaching kids how to learn how to look at photos and then learn how to take photos, and then talking a little bit about perspective and thinking out of the box. And we will talk about the role of visual storytelling in addressing social, political, environmental, and economic issues right here in Maine. And then a small bit on the end with tips, and then also about how you share these things with audiences. Okay. All right. So, what is visual storytelling and types of visual stories? So what we know about students today is that they are pretty visual creatures, and long-term knowledge and storytelling can reinforce critical content while being a little bit more entertaining in the classroom. It puts the students in charge, even when they, even when they really aren't in charge. It might give them, a little bit more of a say, and in the long run, gives more opportunities to learn material because they have to think really critically. They have to know the content, and then they have to think about how they want to present that content. And so they are constantly revisiting what was being taught and really, really examining it quite deeply. Writing words, drawing, creating photographic images stimulates neural pathways between motor, visual, and cognitive skills. So long-term retention of material, I saw go through the roof when I started really using this within my classroom. It's a vital skill. It's got unlimited applications. Well done, it can have, sort of a magical effect, moving, enlightening, entertaining audiences. You can use stories, we use stories, I guess, every day to calm children or to reassure ourselves. Lawyers rely upon it, to vividly recreate crimes to juries, archaeologists to conjure, up past civilizations, and teachers can use it to make abstract concepts very real to their students. Storytelling is a story told primarily through the use of visual media. So that might be told using still photography, illustration, video. It can be enhanced by graphics, music, voice, and other audio. On a side note too, I do use a variety of technology to create visual stories, but you don't have to, and you don't need to be put off by this either. It can be incredibly simple as well. If you are going to use technology, see technology as a storytelling tool. It's not the goal, of teaching. Those students need some knowledge of how to use equipment or draw. Teaching about technology or drawing should never be the sole focus of the curriculum. Simple editing programs such as iMovie are very intuitive. Cell phones, technology, you can do a lot of this simply using your cell phone. Applications that you do see up here, the top one is Apple Clips, and the bottom one is iMovie, are, iOS, applications. But every single cell phone or every single piece of technology has something that's very similar. So you're going to be able to learn quite quickly. And if you can't learn, another bonus is your students are really, really good at navigating this stuff. And so it's another opportunity to put them up front and in charge. If you have a camera or a phone or a computer, you're ready to go. Your creative aspirations will drive your technology learning curve. Encourage students to use basic shapes, stick figures, like symbols. I get kids all the time that are like, I can't draw. It's like, well, not with that attitude, you can't, but on top of it, reminding them to start simple, dream big. Once you think of an element that you want to include that requires more software or gear, you'll be compelled to learn how to use it, I assure you. All right. So I guess, the first thing that I do with students is that I have to kind of talk about with them, no matter, if I'm going to have them start on a storytelling gig, whether that's, I don't know, illustrating the life of Siddhartha, or telling me, the story of the Berlin Conference, like, how to do it in a more engaging way that does not make your classmates nor the teacher want to stab their eyeball out with their own pencil. Like, it's really, really like trying to get them to become rich storytellers using tons and tons of, adjectives and very, very vivid, imagery to do it. So what I start by doing is I start by asking them, what is storytelling and why do people tell stories? How do people tell stories? So I'm gonna ask you for a minute to jot down some thoughts or type it in the chat box. I love that. We should not even be. This is great if you want to add it to the chat box. Tell me, how do people tell stories? I'm only going to give you about 30 seconds, if even that. Color combination on the plate is striking. Is it laid out? The color combination on the plate is striking. Oh, I see. Yes, that meat is always laid out that way, and it is eaten raw. And nobody got sick while we were there, by the way. All right. So how do people tell stories, right? Hand gestures, acting it out, written messages, wonderful, right? What method of storytelling might a storyteller use if he or she wants an audience to do or to feel something? Add a couple more thoughts to that, please. Oh, I love that. Telling stories to pass down family village history orally. For me, when I'm talking about telling a story, I generally use imagery in order to start that story, and then followed by a lot of detail. For example, we've got this image that was taken in the mountains of Soto, Ethiopia. I happened to go on a hike one day. And as I was coming up the mountain, this was a fairly typical scene of kids carrying down, from villages that were high in the mountains. These were mats that were made, and the round trip walk to the market is generally about 10 plus miles, at a time. The kids didn't really say much to us, as much as they laughed. They were speaking Amharic, which is the language there. They stood there, they stared at us. They laughed a lot. They laughed together. The city was not used to many foreign visitors, so the initial shock of what they saw at first, really kind of gave way. And then they started to repeat the Amharic term Ferengi over and over and over again, which is originally derived from the Arabic term for Frank, meaning all Europeans or Westerners. Secondly, what I'll do is I will introduce the use of photographs in storytelling, right? So I might do an informal poll by asking students to raise their hands if they think telling stories requires words, you know, and that I will take the time at that point to highlight some other storytellers that I know, or, you know, explain that some storytellers use photographs to tell stories as part of storytelling method, right? You know, so I often will use a series of photo essays, and you can find these photo essays all over the place. They can be found on National Geographic Education website. They can be found just by typing in photo essays on virtually any topic, you know, like whatsoever. What I love about a photo essay is that it will often be pieced together similarly to what you see on the play, you know, on the slide in front of you. And then what I will do is I will ask, you know, a series of questions, right? You know, so questions like, what story does this series of photographs tell? Does it tell one story or more than one story? What does using only photographs to tell a story add to the story itself? How would this story be different if the storyteller only used words and no photographs? Would it add to the story if the storyteller used both words and photographs? And as we see, it really, you know, like kind of follows that. And these questions, again, can be found on the lesson that I cited in the introduction. And I will make this entire slideshow presentation available to you all, and with the links that are attached. So, anybody want to take a guess as to what this photo essay is about? What story does this series of photographs tell? Making popcorn, harvesting foods. The story is the story of coffee, as a matter of fact, from start to finish. What we see here on the bottom left-hand side, right, this gentleman standing here is Ethiopian coffee farmers. And he is discussing, you know, like the different ways that coffee is grown. Coffee starts as a small green bean, you know, with the seed on the inside of it. The second slide are some of the obstacles that coffee growers actually meet in Ethiopia. Coffee is the #1 export product of the Ethiopians, and their entire national economy really, really, you know, it's a backbone to their national economy. And what we see here are some obstacles that he was having with mold that was growing, in which they had to get some help from international organizations to identify what was going on. What we see up here are Ethiopian women making traditional Ethiopian coffee pots, um, which are made from hand. And then a traditional, you know, like what you're going to see if you show up at somebody's house and they invite you over for coffee. This is going to be in the living room. The pot, the picture got cut off right here, is on top of sort of like an indoor grill. And then, of course, we have the small Ethiopian coffee cups. I'll tell you what, that's all you'll need to set you on fire for the entire day. It's just one. It's just one of those. So a lot of times I was a little revved up walking through Ethiopia. And traditionally popcorn, and not only popcorn, but corn on the cob is also served during while you are having coffee with people. So an interesting side note, I linked this with my students to a globalization unit when I told them the story about Starbucks being sued by the Ethiopian government because they were using the Ethiopian coffee name and trying to sell coffee as being 100% Ethiopian coffee, while adding other blends from other countries like Vietnam into that. The Ethiopian government sued them and won. All right. So this is something that I have ripped off straight from Joe Schmidt. Thank you, Joe Schmidt. You know, and this is what I'm talking about. So this is a it's good. So this is a way that we can. This promotes a lot of fun in my classroom. I'm telling you what, it's one of the students' favorite things to do on the planet. And I will look for an image that tells a story, and I will have them start by learning how to look at an image. I can't teach kids how to visually storytell anything if they don't know how to look at something critically first, right? And so this is a gem right here. So students, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a really, really short version of this. I'm only going to give you, we're going to do 3 rounds, and I'm only going to give you 30 seconds, you know, like per round to produce what I'm asking for, okay? In my classroom, it would be 1 minute, you know, so in total, this would take you, you know, about 3 minutes, you know, to get students thinking and get things down on paper. And then the sharing after that might take another couple of minutes. Altogether, I spend less than, usually I think I have it perfected to about 6 minutes total it takes me, you know, to get through this entire process with them. So first 30 seconds, what I want you to do is I want you to look at this image and I want you to write down everything that you see, literally, that you see. 30 seconds. You have 15 seconds. 5 seconds. Next 30 seconds, draw a line if you're doing a line, right? The next 30 seconds, what I'd like you to do is tell me, what do you think is going on in this image? What do you think is going on? Go. You have 10 seconds. Stop. And last bit, last 30 seconds. What questions do you have about this image? Ready? Go. 10 seconds. And I try to encourage students as many questions as you can. And stop. And this is where I would have kids put down their pencils, right? You know, and I always have kids that try to put down their pencils before, you know, like, well, I got enough. And it's really like, give me 3 more, give me 5 more, you know, like really, really kind of encouraging them to keep going, that the expectation is that this is, you only have 1 minute. You can do anything for 1 minute, keep writing, right? And it pushes them. Sometimes at the share out point, we do a couple of things. If I'm in a hurry, it might be, you know, we share a little bit from each section. Sometimes something that's pretty fun to do and that creates class competition a little bit is really having them share out. So I'll start with one student. I'll say, okay, in the section, write down everything you see. Tell me one thing that's on your list. And the rules are that nobody else can repeat what somebody has already said, you know, so it starts to build their listening. They can't be, you know, thinking about it. It's build their listening skills. They can't repeat. And if they repeat, they are out and they go for the last person standing, you know, like something like that. They love it. And then it also, you start to see the details, you know, start to come out, right? So they might be talking at first about human skull, teeth, and then they're going to start getting a little bit more, when they start to be like the color green. The rope is spiraled. The skull has a fracture, like in it. I see A4, like down, and the more that they're searching and they're searching and they're searching, and I find that detail increases greatly. Students learn how to look at the world, right, using these details. It also allows them to kind of hypothesize, if you will, about the image beforehand. Does anybody want to share what they think was going on right here? Come on. You can unmute yourself if you'd like to.
Were they fishing and found these bones?
Are they fishing? I love it. I love it. Okay. And so like when we talk about what we think is going on, I try to keep students like, you need to make a statement about, like what's going on. And then there's like also these times for these great questions, like that was a great question, Kelly, right? And right here, this is all of these images. If you have not figured out already, I'm trying to tell you the story of Ethiopia, right? And so in doing so, Ethiopia had a period of time in 1974 when the Dervish, which was a political faction in Ethiopia, overthrew the government of the Ethiopian Empire and Haile Selassie, right, during a mass protest. And Gishtu Miriman became chairman in 1977, and he launched a really, really violent, sort of program to eliminate political opponents, with tens of thousands of people being imprisoned and executed without trial. And you can go to Addis Ababa and see the Derge Museum. And inside that museum, is where this picture was taken. The writing on the back is Amharic, right? And it is used to describe. It's sort of like your caption on a museum, that you're walking around in. A4 would have been used to designate the bones and where they came from, matching, like bones. And of course, unfortunately for this individual, the green rope was added for dramatic effect, in that this individual was beaten and executed. Okay. So student photos and getting students to get out there and take photos. First thing I talk about with them, aside from details, is perspective and thinking out of the box. I cannot do a visual storytelling essay if I'm only used to taking selfies and posting them on the Snapcrack, okay? So it really, really has them, kind of taking a look at their surroundings. And so what I try to do is I try to get them to take a picture of something that you would see 5,000 pictures of using a different angle. Would anybody like to guess where this is? It is not Ethiopia. Any ideas? Or what it's a picture of? Lake, river? Any idea where that might be? Coastline. Well, it is right. It is in Maine for sure, and this is the Kennebec River. That's a good guess, Androscoggin River, because you know where I work, Edward Little High School. So that would be secondly. But I live in Augusta, Maine, and I'm right down the street here from Joe Schmidt, and I took that picture on one of the running trails. They have something called the rail trail system right there that I go back and forth on. But just simply flipping the picture, up, I have the ability to use something called a live mode on my camera. And from there, you can mess around with the live. And that's, if you look at that picture, yes, indeed, it is moving. That is not you this morning. Push students to get creative beyond the ordinary. I have students, sometimes also use 360 photography. This can be found on things like Google Street View is a good one. And there are images that are there that they can put and look at in a 360 image viewer. Sometimes if we do that, I will ask them, to kind of put themselves, that's another thing. Put yourself in the image, right? What are you looking at? Where are you in this world? I'm a huge, huge fan of geography, so sometimes I'll ask them, well, what are you doing for the day? There, where are you going? What kind of clothing, do you have on? How are you going to get over that obstacle over there? Do you need some tools? And really, really kind of engage them that way. And they have to give me a story, about that image. Visual storytelling to help social, political, environmental, and economic efforts. So the beautiful thing about visual storytelling is that it's engaging. Makes people ask questions. It leads people sometimes to care depending on the image that you are, going to use. It also might help people make personal connections. Photographs hopefully motivate people to care and hopefully make positive changes. I think that, in combination of visual storytelling, like essay, in combination with really well thought out action piece and component, can really lead students to be able to become effective change makers themselves, So, yeah. This particular photo was used when we started talking about government in Ethiopia and infrastructure projects. Does anybody know what language that is on the sides of this structure? Yeah, Mandarin, very good. And so what is, I tell my students that, and we're like, well, Mandarin on the side of a building in Addis Ababa, this is right outside of the African Union, right? And so it led us to this really rich discussion about Chinese workers, working in Ethiopia, and Chinese contractors that were not using Ethiopians to do, or to build the African Union headquarters. It was Chinese contractors being paid to do that. And so, it led us to examining, what does this mean for future domestic economic and infrastructure projects for Ethiopians themselves, and that allowed, and this stems off of, using that image to kind of get them thinking. All right, so sharing. I've got 2 things left and then time for questions. If you guys want me to expand on anything, I'd love to hear from you, but sharing. I don't know, by a show of hands, have any of you ever heard of or used a Pecha Kucha format for presenting things? Yeah, Kelly? Yeah, the Pecha Kucha. One of the greatest inventions of all time. Kelly.
So stressful to keep to that time limit.
Oh, it is stressful. It can be for students, but I'm telling you what, some of the best work that I've gotten from my students is using this format. It's a way to tell a story. It's 20 slides, 20 images, right? And then students have 20 seconds to explain each image throughout the presentation, right? So their presentations are super short. And I'm going to tell you what, I stress a little bit, but it takes some practice, but what I find is that it is more engaging than my students standing up in front of, their peers with a PowerPoint and a slide filled with writing. It forces students to look at, they have to do the critical content piece first. They absolutely have to. I will hand out guiding questions to them that they have to answer. So there's that, process of guidance that comes through with that. And then once, that's done, then we take a look at their answers, right? So we're able to, conference with them on that. Then we turn around and they have to actually find images that make sense. So this is a form of media literacy as well, that you can't, just choose images, that you really, really have to be careful of the image that you're looking at, right? This image that you see up here of a, I think it's known as the starving polar bear, that was taken, but it was also taken at the time of year after hibernation, and so it's really, my students found this, image and really had to talk about, the validity of the image, where it came from, the timing, and what that artist might have been trying to put out, right, or author. Pechakucha was originally developed, I think, as an architectural and design way of presenting information, I think in Tokyo. But it has expanded, and it's used by academics. It's used by a lot of teachers. As a matter of fact, they have Pechakucha nights in the state of Maine that you can go and you can see these students present this information. And I've had students create Pechakuchas and present them later on to invested community leaders. So they invited the superintendents, they invited their principal, the police, chief, the school. I've had kids go to the school board, and be able to present these kinds of things. And where it's so short, like these people that want, they're busy people. So it's just like, well, at the end of it, all we need is 5 minutes of your time. And they have to get to the point. There's not a lot of room for fluff, So it's a great tool if you want to get into your students doing visual storytelling. Topics that, my students covered: Wabanaki Nations, UN Sustainable Development, teens of opiate addicted parents, sex trafficking in Auburn, Maine, racism, eating for athletes. It's endless. So. I also use it extensively to get kids to really connect between the human and natural worlds, because it's a massive, problem. One of the very first things, that we do in my classroom when addressing geography is getting them real clear with what, the human world looks like, what the natural world looks like all the way to the right, and then relationships between, the two of them, which is, exemplified by the center, photograph. So that's a great way of getting them. Okay, hello. Sometimes they do photographic essays in order to address problems that are going on right in their own community and schools. They did a photo. We worked on started until this, working on a photographic essay that will tell the stories of students and teachers who are not getting along so well, or fail to see each other's perspectives all the time. By blacking out the background, that really isolates the individual themselves, right? And you're able to take a closer look and ask, questions, and really kind of see people, for who they are. Some people opted, to want to use props, that would signify something about them. It's a really cool project, which is unfortunately on hold at this moment, given our situation. You want to celebrate their work aside from Pechakuchas and school-wide stuff. I've had them work with, they created wanted to tell the stories of refugees into the area, and so they worked with Kate Weber from Museum LA 2 years ago, and were able to put together, sort of a kind of a fashion show, and it featured photography and interview films about stories, that were being told by kids that remembered, leaving. It was put on by Museum LA, and it was a fantastic project, because when we talk about using visual storytelling, you can do it really simply in the classroom, and you can make it as big as you want. The buy-in is incredible when they have to answer to the museum, education director over here, who's setting deadlines for what she needs, and so it was an incredible event for these kids. Lastly, I'm going to close with the fact that you consider yourself the teacher and the executive producer of this Dog and Pony Show. It is definitely, I love the fact that it's student-centered. What I struggle with is, are people that go, oh, hands off, all right, let them go. That's not the way that this goes. If you're going to get into visual storytelling, it does involve a good deal of deadlines, organization, storyboarding, maybe having kids think about the story that they want to tell and really like thinking carefully. And it's about follow through, you know, and sometimes I've had to put kids up in front of a crowd and they've got nothing, you know, or very little. And I have to, it's not about me, you know, like they have to go through that process, you know. I am happy to report that it only happens once. So, you know, they generally learn after the first time, but I do find that it's transformed my classroom, makes it a fun place, you know, to learn, you know, and for kids to really kind of to get into things. So with that, I know I threw a lot at you in a short time. What time is it? Ooh, 7 minutes. With that, thank you, and open it up for questions.
Does anybody have any questions for Erin that you have not yet asked in the chat box? There was somebody was asking, how do you spell that? A couple people. I'm guessing it was the, shoot, no, I'm going to say it wrong. the 20 slides in 4 minutes.
Oh, Pechacucha, yes. I shall put it in the group chat so that we're not doing this. Let's see, everyone. Pechacucha. Return. Heck yes, absolutely. Thank you. Thanks, Jen.
And I just dropped in the link to the feedback survey and contact hour. I always tell everybody, make sure you spell your email correctly because that is what it will send it to. Make sure whatever name you want on your certificate, you spell that correctly because that's what it will auto-generate. There's some other questions on there, but the last question is, did you complete the webinar? I'm telling you the answer is yes. If you click yes, it will automatically send you a contact hour. If you click no, then I can't help you. So you need to get that 1 out of 1 correct. And
oh, thank you, Crystal.
It will send you that. Other questions for Erin while we still have her here for a couple minutes?
Joe, your link sent us to Shane Gower's PowerPoint.
Oh, hold on.
Just saying.
Oh, let me put the PowerPoint.
Oh, maybe because was that the last thing I'd copied? Hold on.
Probably.
I just got the stuff from Shane's webinar on Thursday to upload. How is
Erin,
that?
that was awesome.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. I'm going to put the link to the PowerPoint in the chat for you guys. Let me just, I should have had this ready to go. Get a shareable link.
Joe, can you copy the chat box for me and email it to me? Because I can't do that.
Who? Oh, Tammy?
Tammy,
Can
again.
you do the control all? You don't get it in the neat little.
All right. Copy link. Where is my Zoom? Okay. Let's see. Everybody. All right, so there's the presentation. It has like the script that I use. I'm sorry, I follow a script because then I get all like lost. Nuts. But yeah, in the script, everything I talked about, it's got the link to the images and storytelling. And where it's live, I could probably also put some links to some of those professional development programs. I am going to put in a shameless plug right now. Actually, because you've got 2 teachers. Let's see.
Erin, while you're doing that, I have the okay. Can I put up that? I grabbed your link. Can I tie that to the video on the webpage then as well?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know if you guys are familiar with Polar Trek or not, but if you want to talk about visual storytelling, Polar Trek is a program that sends pairs educators with researchers, scientific researchers around the globe. It's a competitive application process that goes out every year. This year There are 2 of us from the state of Maine and 2 of us from the same school. Actually, we teach across the hall from each other. But both of us were accepted into the program. I'll be traveling to Greenland to study glacial hydrology at the bed of the Greenland ice sheet, and talk about sea level rise and its impact on the Gulf of Maine. I have a couple of, if you go to the website itself, you can go to virtual base camp, and under current expeditions, it will give you the list of the teachers and where they are going. On these, sites, there are journals, right? And so on these journals, this will tell, different stories, and also give you critical, sort of inside, look at how we are trying to link social studies and science together in classrooms of the polar regions, so by all means, if you want to follow that. And then my colleague, whose name is Jen Johnson, also, from Edward Little High School, she is traveling to the Yukon to take a look at soil erosion. And so here's, like her stuff right here too. And we do like podcasts and all kinds of stuff. Although most of the I think my expedition has been postponed until next year, but we have to journal and use visual storytelling in order to tell you the prep and to give, like critical content for teachers all along anyway. So if you'd like to follow us, that'd be great. And we also have any social studies educators that are interested in learning more about the polar regions and how they inform, and how they affect social, political, and economic change in Maine. We're trying to go for a grant that allows teachers, to be able to meet and discuss that and have, like a huge conference. So if you're interested in that, you can contact me as well, and I'll put you on the list and send you an email.
Any last questions for Erin before we thank her for her continuing incredible work? She was very nice to say all sorts of nice things about me, but Erin does a wonderful job with or without me, so I think she'll be just fine.
Erin, when do you go to Greenland?
I will. I was originally supposed to go in this August, but the National Science Foundation is sending us next year instead. So it'll be August 2021.
It's usually things that don't interfere with the school schedule.
Yeah, for the most part. I've had a couple of, programs. They were back in the day though. There's a program called Teachers for Global Classrooms. It's a Fulbright program. And that one sent me during the school year, but I had to make up those days, like for my school system. And so I did a lot of things during the summer, for them, and also did a fair amount of Skyping in while I was in Kazakhstan during that time. Yeah, but that program is very short too. I think it was there maybe 10 days.
How long
10
is
days or so. But most of the programs I've done have been summer. The Grosvenor program. Yeah, the National Geographic Grosvenor Teacher Fellows program. That was on the tail end of summer. So I missed like the first week of school, like 3 days, 3 or 4 days of school. But most of those programs pay for substitutes, and so it's a matter of, I think the largest struggle that I always have is not being with my kids, I'm not with my kids, so but I find also that experiences like that and making them a part of it, have them help me learn as much about the Greenland ice sheet as possible because I don't know anything. I'm a social studies teacher, they get in on that and, they get excited about it too. So I usually take them with me through the whole application process, applying for, some of these programs, and you wait, and sometimes you get turned down for every program that I've been, I've done, I think 6 or 7 of them, but I've been turned down from over 20, like over 20 times, easily.
That's a great experience for them to walk through with you.
Yeah, it's fun. It's a lot of fun.
Well, can I then shamelessly plug Erin / the teacher leader resource page / the DOE page? If you go, and I can grab the direct link, but as I referenced, Erin has done some of this work already. And if you want to know more about some of the experiences and stuff that she's talking about, she did a complete webinar. We said December, right? Is that what we landed on?
I think maybe it was January.
I just remember I was in Gorham when you were doing it. But here, if you go to this page, you will see that Erin has, in the secondary section, there's Teacher Abroad Global Professional Development Programs. Where
And it gives you all of the links to the programs, and then gives you application tips. And I work with a lot of Maine teachers who, if they're going to apply for something, they'll send me their essays. They'll send me, they'll be like, what do you think about this? Like, I also do, because I've traveled with these programs, I also read applications for National Geographic. I read applications for Fulbright, and for teachers for Global Classrooms program. So I have some insight on what they're looking for, like as well. And it's always, it's not rocket science. It's kids, like bottom line. That's it. Like, how is that going to benefit your kids? It's not about where you want to travel. It's about, where can you travel to bring back, the best possible scenario for something that your kids actually need, in the classroom. Kind of what informs how I apply for these things too. Yeah.
All right.